everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Boardroom Brain podcast. I cannot wait for you to hear from our guest today. She is fantastic. Let me introduce you to her. As CEO, Heather Robertson Fortner leans into her passion for listening to the SignatureFD team, her clients, and the industry to create and implement the organization's vision and mission to impact the lives of 10,000 families. Practicing a coach with empathy leadership style, Heather leverages her unique ability to harmonize people's passions and talents to build teams and lead organizations that deliver excellent and inspiring client experiences. Previously serving as Chief Operating Officer, Chief Compliance Officer, and President of SignatureFD, Fortner has learned, navigated, and held strategic oversight for every aspect of the organization. A highly sought-after leader in the industry, Fortner is regularly asked to speak on the ever-changing landscape of wealth management. Additionally, in 2021, Heather was awarded CEO of the Year by wealthmanagement.com for the category of individual RIA firm leaders. What a bio. Heather, welcome to the show.
It sounds a lot better when you read it.
Well, it's a fantastic bio. And, I had so much fun doing my homework researching to have you come on. Your Inc. article, we're going to have to be sure and include that in the notes for people. This is going to be an episode for people to really remember. But before we dive in, I'm a big reader, as people can see in my background for people tuning in on YouTube. I think it's so important that we educate ourselves with books all the time and take in different information. Tell us as we get started, what are you reading these days? What's inspiring you?
That's a great question. So I have a 5-year-old at home and a 5-month-old at home. So I have to say that my reading styles at the moment vary from Splat the cat to, just some actual fuzzy books that the baby can feel to some things about the business and where we're headed and how to set visions and quite honestly, how to think about people and culture. So I've got a wide variety there going on at the minute.
I love that. And I can't wait to talk more about the path to becoming a mom and a CEO at the same time. It's incredible. Sure. I mentioned a moment ago the article that you wrote for Inc. that I thought was just great, and everybody should go in and read it. You talk about what happens after the glass ceiling is shattered. Mm-hmm. And as a female CEO, I'd love for people to get to hear more about your journey, what that's been like becoming a CEO and how it's been since then.
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly couldn't have told you if you had said, you know what, you're gonna build this career and you're gonna spend 25 years plus in this industry and then you're gonna be a CEO. I could have never expected what would happen in that moment and from that point forward. I told somebody the other day, it's like you've worked so hard, you've spent so many years getting yourself to a certain place, right? And by that point in time, it's like, what skin you're wearing, what wardrobe you've got, what accessories go with it, how to present yourself, the language, how to talk. And then all of a sudden it's like you're in a whole different world and everybody dresses differently and they accessorize differently and they talk differently and they think differently and they expect different things of you. And so it was this crazy period for me of, interestingly enough, people voicing their expectations of me and me really having to center myself and focus myself on who am I going to be in this next chapter? What of me comes with me? What of these skills? What of this old wardrobe and old accessories, and I don't mean actual clothes, right? But of this old way of being, what of that comes with me, and what do I need to expand upon? What do I need to get rid of? What isn't going to work that has worked for me in the past? And it has been, honestly, it was intimidating at first, and it has been freeing and exciting and invigorating and just this new period of innovation and growth that I really have just loved being in, because what got you here isn't going to be what gets you there.
Ooh, that's a quote right there. That's a quote. I love that. Well, and I'm hearing for you, it sounds like you've held such a flexibility in your career. Sometimes I see that with my clients, that sometimes we get a little bit of rigidity of like, okay, I finally mastered this and now I want to stick to it. I'm hearing for you, there's been a real flexibility and an openness to adapt as you go along.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know that I would have necessarily thought that I was doing that intentionally to start with, but I think what happened for me very early in my career, and I tell people this all the time, because I think for me, for a period of time, it held a little bit of a negative connotation, but it has been helpful to me, which is that I recognized early on that I was my worst self when I got bored. And so I had to do things to be sure that in order to operate as my best self, that I was putting myself in situations where I could constantly learn, constantly grow, constantly challenge myself intellectually, because if I didn't, I ended up not being the best version of myself. And so I think that realization very early on, I don't think it was, me trying to be flexible or me trying to recognizing that was going to be beneficial to me. I think it was just me trying to be sure that I didn't get restless and get bored and not be my best self. And through that, it allowed me some opportunity and availability and some freedom to plug in and learn different things without feeling like I was doing myself a disservice, or that I should have just been super narrowly focused, and feeling any shame or regret for that. And that served me well.
That's really interesting. And, my question in that, because I'm hearing for you, it sounds like there's just this natural love of learning, challenging yourself. Like when you say boredom is kind of my vice, I'm curious what advice you have for people listening in who are saying, oh, I'm in such a state of burnout. I wish I had that hunger to learn. That drive is not even coming up for me. What advice would you have for those folks tuning in?
Yeah, I love that question, because I don't want it to seem like I don't ever rest. And I think that is the key component there, of just really realizing and recognizing what drives you at the core. And if so naturally I am an introverted person, which most people look at me and they're like, I would so not expect that of you, right? Like, extroversion is a skill set that I have learned over a period of time. But what I recognized with that was that I needed rest, and I needed those periods of time where I could recuperate, because my energy naturally just comes from processing, being alone, thinking, having time away in nature and those kinds of things. And so I've just been very intentional about being sure that I could have those times, which I think has avoided the burnout for me. And quite honestly, I know so many people and really so many women who don't give themselves the freedom to rest and to say it's okay to rest and it's okay to recuperate. You spend your whole life taking care of everyone else, but don't you realize that if the plane's going down, you have to put on your oxygen mask first?
Yes.
Right?
100%, 100%. And it's funny you mentioned that you identify as an introvert. I do as well. And so that time, that restorative time to just have some quiet and give yourself permission to do that. Normally we talk about this at the end of the show, but I think it segues nicely here. Tell us what some of the things that you do for yourself, Heather, when you do talk about restorative rest.
I love that, because, right now with a 5-year-old and a 5-month-old and being the CEO, there's not a whole lot of that time that you would normally think would be available. But I think it's just finding right now, it's not even the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. And so being super intentional about the other day, taking an hour and a half and going to lunch with my husband. Like, that was, both of the girls were in school. And so there was an opportunity in the middle of the day to just say, you know what? We're going to go to lunch together and we're going to connect over an hour. We both have to eat. And I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, right? So they're taking those just brief moments. I've got a friend down the street. I'm so blessed. She is the CEO of another company, and she's been at it longer than I have. And she's just such a fountain of wisdom. And I literally, I texted her and I was like, I really feel like I could use some wisdom at the moment. And at 4:00, I literally walked 2 houses down in the neighborhood, and we just had a glass of Prosecco out on the porch, and it was just this real moment of, hey, connecting with the humans in your life that are your support, that are your community, where you do belong, where you don't have to put on the show and you don't have to be anything other than who you are. That time, that quality time, not quantity, but quality of time, it fascinates me how rejuvenated you can be in such a short window of time when you're intentional about that.
Yes. And when you're present for it, it's funny. We were doing a segment the other day with 23andMe, and we were talking about the concept of monotasking, how groundbreaking, not really.
Right.
This idea of, instead of multitasking, of trying to do a million things at once, just be here right now.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is actually so restorative. We think it's going to save us time to do a bunch of things at once, but we feel so much more rested when we're just intentional with one thing, and sometimes just one person right in front of us at the moment.
That's absolutely right. And I think it really hit home for me when I was home. So I took, about 6 or 7 weeks of maternity leave. And obviously our world was just crazy, right? Like, you just are crazy with a newborn and all that. And I remember having this moment where it was like a baby needed me, and my husband was saying something to me, and my 5-year-old needed my attention, and something was going on at work, and I had my phone, and I thought, I'm not really here for anybody. I am not present for anybody. And when you put your phone down, right, and you can clear the mechanism and you can spend 5, 10, 15 minutes plugged into one human, it's amazing how valuable they feel and how intentional you feel. And then it's enough progress and enough momentum that you can keep moving forward. But it requires an intention that I think sometimes the noise of our lives can just overpower.
So true. So the power of setting the phone down sometimes. And for you, the power of community too. We talk about this a lot on this show, the power of mentorship, because I think so many people are lacking mentors in their lives, whether it's a social anxiety thing that they're afraid to connect. I'm already hearing for you. You've got some incredible people in your life, a fellow female CEO 2 doors down. I love that. How are different people mentoring you? How has that been a part of your career journey so far?
I love that question. So I think there are the natural people that come into your world just through the community that you are in. But then I think there's an intentionality of seeking out that mentorship. So I have 2 different external coaches to the organization. One is, probably 30 years, my senior, has been there, done that, led the firms, is super connected and coaching me on the future of myself, how to be the leader that I want to be in the future. And then I have another coach who's probably younger than I am, entrepreneurial, very innovative, quick start, who challenges me from an ideas perspective. Are you thinking about your business correctly? Are you thinking about your family? Are you actually living what it is that you're preaching to everybody else? And so being intentional, and I keep using that word, but it was really this this recognition on my part that I couldn't do this alone. And then giving myself the space for that to be okay. Like, I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room. I can't be the smartest person in every situation. I can't know everything. And I'm not uniquely gifted to do that. So how do I surround myself with people who are uniquely gifted to do that, so that we can actually, in community, make a much larger impact as we move through the world? And that, for us, for me personally, and for us as an organization, is what it's all about.
That is so well said. And I would argue that does probably make you the smartest person in the room, in the sense of knowing we need to get other voices in here. We need to have other conversations. Some of the best executives, including yourself, talk about how they have coaches, they have outside support.
Absolutely.
You have to have that in place, I would imagine, just to be thinking about all the different perspectives. So I love that you speak to that. And interestingly, we have some similarity in that we both have a counseling background. I'm a psychologist. Yeah. You have your master's in counseling. I love this quote when I was researching before our call today, how you say every CEO should have a master's in counseling.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that. I'm curious.
It has been, so I'll tell you a little story. So growing up, money was tight. Money was always one of those things in our home that hard conversations would have to be had around. And as I grew up, I just realized and started to believe that if people could be well educated about money, which every human has to deal with, every single one of us in the world has to deal with money, and every one of us could be better educated on how to communicate well, which we're all human and we all have to communicate. If you could combine those two things, and you could teach people how to not only be financially literate, but also to communicate well around money issues, that you could change the world, because you change individual lives, you change family dynamics, you change how families communicate, which makes generational impact, which then begins to make community impact. And so that was the reason that I got a degree in counseling. My undergrad's in finance, and I just thought, I see this vision of, I think I can make a difference if I just can help people combine these two things. And ultimately, what that led to was, this company where we believe that your wealth, your time, your money, your resources, all of those things that make you, combined with the things that you find worthwhile, that is where your net worthwhile is. And really, it's just the overlap of the resources aligned with the things that are important to you, to your purpose. Being able to bring those two things together, and quite frankly, being able to communicate around that in a way that most people can't. I think that is what changes lives, and it's what changes communities if it's done well.
I so agree with you. I think it's such powerful work you're doing. And you were writing about this in Inc. a bit, that this is a social justice issue. So many of us were uncomfortable talking about finances. I see that for a lot of my female clients. Negotiating, talking about salary, they just cringe and tense up. Sometimes we see for different communities, for different folks who are lacking privilege and different experiences, they are not being given this information for learning about their finances. So I'm curious to hear more about how you are integrating this as a social justice issue and making an impact there with your team.
Yeah, I think it starts with ensuring first that your organization looks like the community that you're serving, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. I was thinking this morning, it's funny, I was driving, I had a wonderful lunch, and I was thinking, what if instead of teaching trigonometry. Every classroom taught financial literacy, because how many of us actually use trigonometry in our daily lives? And every single one of us has to use financial literacy, money, in our daily lives. And so I was thinking about, well, what if you did that, and Georgia and I think Alabama or Florida, one just passed the law that, financial literacy is actually going to have to be a mandatory course in high school. And I think, like, this is how these things get started, right? But having people in your organization that are representative of the community that you are serving. Because I will tell you that when you come into a place where you haven't been given that opportunity and you don't know how to talk about money, and then you try to walk into a place where it's not a safe place to have those conversations, it's not going to happen. That progress is not going to be made. So, what we're trying to do is be sure that we are building an organization that is a safe place, not only for diversity to come, but for it to be included. Because it doesn't matter if you get talent in the door, if they don't stay because they don't feel like they belong, then you have done no good, right? And changing that and being intentional about that, those are the things, those are the small foundational things that matter to being and building more impact along the way.
That is so, so powerful. And I think the fact that you are advocating for that as a CEO, that trickles down. That sends such a powerful message. And you speak to this idea of belonging, which to me, when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion work, it all boils down to belonging. Everybody has a seat at the table. So I love that you say that. And it's also, to me, as a clinician, it's a mental health issue too. Financial freedom, financial literacy, it affects our mental health. I'm curious your thoughts to that as well, with what you see advising and supporting 10,000 families.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me personally, I can look back at the history of my own personal world and realize, my parents weren't super financial literate. And there were a ton of decisions that I made. One in particular, that I reflect on all the time, where I had a full ride to college and I turned it down. And there was no one in my world that was asking me those questions of, is this a smart financial decision? And do you understand the ramifications of this decision? And thank goodness, I was very blessed. I, was able to take financial loans and student loans and work, my way through school, but it had real ramifications. I remember the day I paid off all of my student loans, like 15 years later. I felt so proud of myself.
Yes.
But it took me 15 years to pay off, and I didn't have to do that, right? So it's like having those conversations and thinking through, just in my own personal world, how my life could have been different if I had made different decisions. Now, I think all things work together for good, right? And there was purpose in all of it. But I do believe that whether you have money or whether you don't, there are issues around money. If you have a ton of it, there are issues around money. If you don't have any of it, there are issues around money. And it runs the gamut in between. All of those issues, concerns, cares, wanting to provide for ourselves, for our families, for our children, for the people that we love, our older parents, all of those things take a toll on us mentally and emotionally. Being able to come alongside of someone in that journey and meet them in the gap, meet them in the place where I've got this and I need to get here and I don't know how to fill that gap. Being the individual that can step into that gap with confidence and with compassion and with empathy and help people build the bridge to the other side in a way that they're proud of and feels good for them and achieves their goals. To me, that's everything.
Yeah, it's absolutely everything. And I so hear how you tie in that counseling background too, to help people feel safe in sharing, because money is such a vulnerable thing, such a private thing that people
Yes, it is.
are nervous to talk about sometimes. And so I hear you really do create such a culture of safety, both externally and internally. And last question I have in this category before we jump into family, how has it been as CEO? How are you also bringing mental health to the people who work at SignatureFD as we come through this pandemic over these last few years? I'm so passionate about bringing mental health to the workplace. How are you bringing that to your team as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think every organization is dealing with this right now, what if they're talking about it or if they're not, right? Because all of us as humans have gone through a period of trauma. And if you are not reconciling that and talking openly about that and making it okay for people to just simply raise their hands and say, I'm tired, I'm sad, I'm exhausted, this has been really hard. I've lost people that I've loved. I've been scared. My daughter, my 5-year-old, was a preemie and had lung issues. And there was a period of time, that we were like the fear of the unknown and her already being compromised, from a lung perspective, really like that fear weighed on me for a very long period of time. And so that in and of itself will create an exhaustion that people have to eventually recover from. And so I think just leaning into the humanity of it all, right? Recognizing that at the end of the day, no matter who you are, no matter your color, no matter your ethnicity, no matter your beliefs, we have all just been through a period of trauma. And the best way for us to come out of that in the best way possible, not only for each human, but for the business, is community. I mean, it is belonging. It is feeling safe to be able to say, there's some things I need right now, and can you help me get them? And I believe that organizations are very well positioned to be able to help their people in a way that they've never been before. And if you lean into that, the loyalty and the community and what you will get out of people because they then want to help others.
Yes.
That is what community is all about.
I mean, it really sounds like at SignatureFD, there is a sense of community where people get to know each other as people, not just as fellow colleagues, but there's really a culture of care that exists there. Of Nathan, tell me how you're really doing underneath the pleasantries.
I told somebody the other day, I feel like somebody shoved my life into a blender and just hit smoothie. It is, honestly, if I'm being 1000% transparent, I wasn't sure when I got pregnant. I was like, I have no idea how this is going to work. I'm not only was I 45 at the time, but I've got a 5-year-old and a CEO role. And there was some real anxiety for me of, I just don't even know how all this is going to work. And I think I'm actually, because of that, recognized I need my community more than I've ever needed my community. The things at work, I only do the things that only I can do because I am surrounded by a team of individuals that are amazing at what they do and what they do well. Why in the world do I don't need to lean in there, right? Let them be their best selves. I just focus on the things that only I can do and be intentional about being present for the people and the things that I need to be present for. And I really believe that when you are clear, it is kind. And when you clearly communicate the vision and the goal and what needs to happen and what the expectations are, whether it is of yourself or whether it is of the team, whether it is at the office or whether it is at home, it creates this place where everyone can be successful because everyone is clear on what success looks like. And that's important for me. It's important for my family. It's important for my teammates. And I think it's important for us, just as a community to say, what is success? What really matters? I was thinking about what just happened in Texas, right? And the perspective that it brings to the things that really don't matter, the things that are just noise, that we would all be better to let go of and lean into how do we actually love each other well? And that fixes a lot of other things.
So beautifully said. So beautifully said. I know at the time that we're recording this episode, Uvalde just happened on Tuesday, and it weighs so heavy, I think, on all of our hearts as we're watching what's happening in our country right now. And I think it brings up a lot in terms of thinking about becoming a parent and everything like that. I'm not a mom yet. That's probably coming soon for me, but I'm wondering, I think people will be listening in, a lot of women who hear your story. You've become the CEO, you have a 5-year-old, a 5-month-old, a marriage, a relationship. It's incredible. And I think a lot of women will look and hear your story and ask, how do you do it? Because I think a lot of, at least I know for me, something that comes up for me is I get into this kind of either or, like I'm either going to have an amazing career, or how do I be a mom and do it in the way that I want to? I'm sure you get asked this question all the time. Tell us how that journey has been navigating both worlds and bringing them together.
I don't like to call anything, I think I gave myself permission at some point because I realized I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do work-life balance. I just couldn't do it. I just don't, for me, it just never existed. So it's work-life integration. That is what works for me. I have natural tendencies to want to go to the extreme, like super high performer. I want to win. I just want to, when I lock in on a goal, it's almost like everything else kind of fades away, and the goal is really all that I see there for a period of time. And I just recognized that I didn't want to miss everything else along the way. And my husband, he drives me crazy because he's so right. And Lord, I don't ever let him listen to these podcasts because I don't want him to get a big head about it. But honestly, the pace at which he chooses to live his life and enjoy every moment, it has been such a blessing and lesson for me of giving myself grace. I think we as women, we extend so much grace to everyone else in our lives. And yet we are so hard and critical on ourselves for not being perfect. And I think the moment that it hit me to my core was I heard my daughter say something negative about herself. And I thought to myself, that's not okay that she's saying that. And we had a conversation about it. And then this little voice in the back of my brain that said, but you say stuff like that to yourself all the time. How are you ever going to teach her to have positive self-talk and to not let everyone else's opinions or comments or expectations weigh on who she is and what she chooses to do and how she chooses to live her life if you can't do the same thing? And in that moment, there was just this real raw feeling that in order for me to model for her, I have to do it myself. And that is the hardest thing to do. And so I literally have a piece of art in my bathroom, right by the sink where I brush my teeth. And all it says is grace and grit. That's all right? It is the grit and the resilience to continue to put one foot in front of the other, but it is the beauty of the grace for it to be okay, no matter what it looks like.
Mm.
And if I can extend that to myself and I can extend it to other people, I mean, I really believe that that is where the beauty of the journey and the beauty of doing the life together and the beauty of lifting each other up along the way. And I think women don't do that enough, right? We're so afraid of being judged that we don't lean into the beauty of what supporting and loving other women and helping them along the journey can be.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that whole thing. Like, I just want to put that in a quote right there. That is so powerful. Grace and grit. I'm going to hold on to that. And you do remind me, because I resonate so much of what you're sharing. It's so easy. I've got my to-do list. Look at this right here. It's so easy to just get the check.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get a check mark for the relationships in your life.
No, you can't.
And I would argue that's the most meaningful thing, and having people in our life who remind us of that. It sounds like your husband is a reminder of that.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him that.
We won't send him a special link of this episode. But yeah, just reminding yourself, life is more than the check marks and the goals, as great as they are. But the relationships and the ages of our kids, we can't get that back. So
Not
wow, Heather. Okay, this episode has been phenomenal. I know I'm going to bookmark this and save it for later. Our last question, we ask this to every guest, and I feel like you've already been referencing a lot of this throughout our conversation. What do you want your legacy to be?
I love that. I love that question. My personal mission statement is to love and lead well. That's it. I want, at the end of my days, I want people to say, she loved me and she led me well. That's it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. What a fantastic time together. I learned so much. I'm heartened. I know other people will be as well. Heather, where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the work that you're doing, learn more about SignatureFD?
Absolutely, www.signaturefd.com. It's some wonderful resources, some great tools, and we would love to help anyone that would like to lean in and find their personal net worthwhile and figure out how to align their wealth to that. We would love to help.
Wonderful. Hopefully this episode inspires people to build up their financial literacy even more. If it spurs something for someone, I think that is time well spent beyond many other things. Heather, what a gift to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. It was a wonderful conversation.
Take good care.
Thank you.